Heinz, I saw a picture of you with a bike that I couldn't recognize. It was like a racer bike, and you have
Yeah, but
some
my face,
winterly
my face,
face,
come
your
on.
smiling face, and you have a winter, what's
But
it
not
called, winter
now, not
coat.
for now,
Not
but
for
many,
now.
many years ago.
How many years ago was that?
I was not, Alaska was 1970, but
97,
yeah,
70.
1970, yes,
Oh,
1970, some 53 years ago.
yeah,
But you have to say this is my way. I wanted to go to Alaska,
yeah.
one of the places, but all what we see and what happened is a result of coincidence.
Okay.
Somebody you meet.
Yeah.
The whole thing was, I was late. I sort of had made my way up on 69 on the east coast of the United States, wanted to see the fall colors in New England. So that's like September beginning there. And then I sort of, okay,
The Indian summer?
if I hurry up, I can go quickly into Canada. And then if I'm going fast, maybe I could still do before the winter come
Yeah.
to reach to Fairbanks. I didn't think about the North Slope or anything like that to get to Alaska. But the whole journey up the East Coast took time, and so it was pretty late when I got to Montreal and Toronto. Yeah, some of the pictures I have in Toronto where we were already in the snow. So, and some of the way west, it's a long distance, so I did not cycle all. Some of it I went by car to Saskatoon, and then I cycled again to Moose, back into the Trans-Canada Highway. But the reality was that it was getting later and later.
Yeah.
And so I pumped as much as I could from Calgary to start on the Alaska Highway was another 2,500 kilometers, which I did by transport, just to make it before the winter comes. You know.
Okay.
Then I started on the Alaska Highway, and after 400 miles, 500 miles, about 800 kilometers, bad weather started. It wasn't snow yet, it was raining, but it wasn't an asphalt road, it was a bad road. So I got stuck about 2 days in one place, and then it stopped raining and I wanted to go, but it was very muddy. And then I met two Americans who had seen me some week before on the Alaska Highway, and they stopped in their beautiful sports car and they said, "Hey, listen, why don't you come and from the Alaska border, you got asphalt road." And so I had to come back anyway, so I said, okay, put the bike on top of the car, and we drove. Not very long, up to Watson Lake is where is one of the main stops on where there's a signboard. It has all the signs into how many miles to the end of the world, you know.
Okay.
There was a big signpost, very famous, because all the people come and put their hometown there and say 6,600 kilometers or something like that. And so then with these guys we went, and it was getting late, and they changed driver. And the driver, he was the owner of the car. He drove too fast. And it's only 50, 60 miles later on in a curve. But I know how to drive because I knew how to drive a car by that time. It was really fast, and they built the roads with many bends, you know, because they were afraid of the Japanese invasion there. The military had built the road on purpose with many bends, but they always made the curves inclined, so you could sort of reasonably fast in the curve. But because of gravel, and the guy was a little bit too far on the outer curve, where the embankment started to go down into we later found out it was a river, and he took the curve a little bit too fast, and the back of his sports car slipped back, and so instead of, if he would have been a good driver, he would have maybe caught the car, but he couldn't get the car. He rolled down the embankment into the river, you know. And my bike was, the carrier was stopped somewhere down the river, but the river wasn't very deep. But
cold.
about a meter deep or so. We could get out of the car, and car was landed on its wheels. Yeah, we were lucky in that sense. But out, I tried to collect my stuff. We got find a bicycle, and it was in late October. No, it was in November already, and so the nights were very, very cold. It was 10, 15 below zero at the time. But the water was still running, and it was a fast-running river. So the guy shouted, "Come out, you're freezing to death!" And we had to clamber up the embankment with my stuff, with Brad on top. And then we tried to find. There were some trucks on the. He stopped the truck, and actually we had some petrol. We rescued some petrol out of the boot of the car, and we started a fire on the side of the road.
Okay.
And then the truck driver, he saw my stuff and the bike went in the truck some 50 miles back to a rest house where we stopped for the night, Okay. So, but anyway, that was all a prelude to what happened later.
Yeah.
But so my bike was damaged, and this was still about 200 miles to Whitehorse, which is in the Yukon in Canada.
Yeah.
And I managed to get there with the bike 2 days later. I don't know what happened with them because their car was damaged, and it was bye-bye. It was only a short distance with them. So I cycled to Whitehorse, but then it was getting later, and it was so I decided it was no good to go on. Then I meet people, always nice people everywhere. Yeah. So I could leave the bicycle there, and I was out stopping further up the Alaska Highway. Okay. And was getting, then there was snowfall, and a little bit further, and already in Alaska, in the United States, Alaska, before it was the Yukon, we got stuck on a couple of hippies picked me up with a pickup truck. Not a pickup truck, sort of a van, but the guy was standing behind the wheel. He has no seat on the wheel, really? One of the 2 or 3 of the hippies was sitting in the back of the car, and I was standing beside him, or there was a seat on the bypass seat, was a seat. So we went, about 100 miles on, the road was blocked by a jackknifed truck. It blocked the whole road. You couldn't pass there. So we got stuck there. And until the whole night, it was pretty cold, and they didn't have heating or anything. There wasn't even a door on the car that they had, But by that time, many other people stopped, and so I managed to get another vehicle. It was a nicer vehicle. I was driving all the way to Anchorage, and then there was a vehicle coming to I got a picture of that. I don't know if you got the picture. Where did you see the truck?
I took some pictures yesterday.
And it wasn't all that difficult. It wasn't fall down. So it was relatively easy to get. And so I got to Anchorage. In Anchorage, okay, I was there. It was an interesting festival. The Pow Pow, they call it. It's an Indian type of festival where they toss people in the air and stuff like that. And I met some people. And I don't know how and where I met these British petroleum people. Okay. And they told us about the North Slope and how they found the oil there, and that they were delving with. And I told my story, and they said, "Oh, we can make a nice story with this guy." And so they asked somebody from Reuters. Reuters is the big English agency, and they said, "Okay, you got to ride. We bring you to the North Slope, and you make a trip with a bicycle." But I didn't have a bicycle, so we had to get a bicycle. Another one in a sports shop, in a bicycle shop one. Okay. And they flew me to the North Slope, with a British petroleum jet.
How far was that?
From Anchorage to the Arctic Ocean is 1,400 kilometers. Oh. Well, that's quite a lot. Yeah. But you got Anchorage and Fairbanks. Fairbanks is in the middle of Alaska, and then you have the Brooks Range, and afterwards you have the North Slope, which is ice and snow already at that time of the year.
Yeah, of course.
So arriving there, they drove me around, and I had to ride the bicycle. It was a bit fake because I mean a total of, let's say, maybe 5 kilometers I rode, because they had some routes there between the pipe, the towers where they had drilled the oil, but the oil wasn't flowing. It was locked up, and they had to build the pipeline, and it was where the pictures that were taken. Of course, I got the equipment from British Petroleum, all.
I mean, there was no luggage on the bicycle.
40,
it was a racing
It was just
bike,
a racing bike. It was 40 below zero up there, and
Oh.
it's a very interesting. As we flew south
Fahrenheit
again,
or Celsius?
the first time I saw the sun coming out, rising of the west.
Okay.
How could it be? Normally sun rises from the east,
Yeah.
But they flew from, the sun had gone down,
Yeah.
and we flew back south. And as we flew south, the sun came up again.
Okay.
Very interesting.
Yeah.
And I got out of the plane because I said, when I just let me off in Fairbanks, I started to hitchhike back because I knew some people in Fairbanks, and there was the lowest ever temperature I went through was 54 degrees below zero Fahrenheit, which is about it's about the same in at that temperature. They two meet more or less.
Okay.
So you're 50 below zero. And I was hitchhiking back to Anchorage. Somebody stopped and he says, "You crazy? Guys, you're dying in no time, you come out." And of course the truck driver was a beautiful hot air, and so he drove me back to Anchorage, So that was something not planned at all.
No.
And eventually I got back to Whitehorse, and then I had still, I took actually a train, went to Skagway, the place where the gold rush went in 1898, and so from there on.
What did Dalton's?
Skagway was the place, and then I went on to Juneau, which is the capital of Alaska. And from there on, from Juneau, I went south with some of the ferries that run in the something like in Norway. You have the.
It's beautiful
fjords.
along the fjord.
Very beautiful. And I got up to Prince Rupert, and then further down until the northern tip of Vancouver Island, and then I cycled again. It was not very nice, but I had friends in Vancouver, and I met some guy who said, "Okay, let's go to Mexico." And I had friends in Mexico, and he wanted to go over Christmas, and so I left the bicycle again in Vancouver and went down with him to Mexico. That was already the early '71, just after Christmas, So that was the story sort of that happened.
That's beautiful.
But
beautiful
it's
story.
all coincidence. It's all depending on what people you meet. It's what kind of a hurry was. It was all. I could have left it for the winter and would have gone the winter. Actually, the rest of the winter, I went to Florida.
I guess if you would go to Alaska in the summertime, it would be different experience because nobody would stop, I guess.
Not as quick as...
No, because of the...
But truck drivers, although they were not usually allowed to pick up hitchhikers, but they would do. Because they like company and they paid everything usually. They got a big box for every food they had with them. Sometimes only in Australia, the road trains, I don't even know, we have two big trucks, 100 meters long, the truck combined. And they stop and I took one picture of them and they already see me and they talk to the other ones. And the other one coming and stopped and come up in. That's a big muck, one of those American trucks. And he had everything with him. So he gave, I don't like that stuff. So when I left, he left me on the road. I had 20 kilograms of food stuff. You had to get back up. And so that's good because they communicate walkie-talkies in those days, But in Australia, it was some years later. So, I mean, just to remember how hitchhiking goes, and it actually in the United States was very good to hitchhike. You have dread, they look at you, and you look at the driver in the eye, and he sees, oh, it's a good guy. And often they say, normally I don't pick up people, but I think you're a good guy. Or they ask, are you a good guy? Of course I'm a good guy. But it's another experience. I didn't mind to hitchhike because it's very interesting also to meet people. And sometimes they trust you incredibly. They go, take you, it's late. Okay, you can stay in my house, The next day he goes to work and he says, look, take a rest. And they leave you alone in the house, It happens only in America.
That's nice.
It's incredible. In those days, it was good. Although there was a hippie time, which was not that good, for many youngsters, because they had always conflicts with the established community, So that is, in brief, sort of what happened.
What happened in Alaska?
In,
Have you only been once in Alaska, or?
No, later. Once I was at interesting. Everything is coincident. Yeah, I had to go to Hong Kong. My booklets were printed in a Hong Kong print, and always my booklets were printed in Hong Kong. So I had to go there for arrangements, and it wasn't like today you do everything on the computer. You had to be there in person. I talked to the people in person. I made designs of everything in person. So, but the ticket from London to Hong Kong and back to London, because it was through the agency that I worked in London a little bit, was as expensive as another cheap ticket around the world. So I said, hey, come, I'm not. So I took a ticket around the world. So from Hong Kong out, I went to Taiwan, and from Taiwan we flew to Anchorage, and from Anchorage we would have gone to London, to New York, and then back to London. And it was the ticket was cheaper than the standard return ticket. So I did that. And when I arrived in Anchorage, I said, well, I'm here now. You can get off the plane. And within a short time, I had a bike in one of the bike shops. It was usually rented, but it was already September. It was not, the season was over for renting bicycles. So this price that he quoted for the bike was about the price that if you would have rented the bike, So I decided then, at that time it was a flight to North, so guess now I'm going to buy a bicycle there. And so I did that, and it was also pretty late, but I cycled 1,400 kilometers with the board bike then, and it was during the time when 9/11 happened.
Okay.
I was coming to a place just short of Fairbanks, on a little tiny shop on the side of the road, and I see some women inside watching a cheap, in those days, television was these great monitors, they're small ones, And I see an airplane exploding in the air, and it was like, there was a movie at that time, Independence Day or something like that. And there was something, an attack on New York, and it looked exactly like that, And I was what movie is that? And the woman said, no, this is happening now.
Oh.
And we saw repetitious, always the plane flying, and the second one flying into the second tower, and there was even repeatedly. Well, that was a surprise, And then when I was on the North Slope, they also checked everything. They even didn't want to give me my throwaway razor blades, But funnily enough, when I flew out again, on the way back, I flew back, not by bicycle, but I flew back, and I forgot about my Swiss Army knife. And do you believe it or not, they didn't see the Swiss Army knife in my luggage, my hand luggage,
No?
That also happened, And landing in New York, on the right side, you could see what they call it, ground zero.
Yes.
I could see the smoking ruins on the right side, because it was only a few days after that has happened. And then the airport, Kennedy Airport has 7 terminals. And he was not allowed to spend the night in any of the other ones. So, and I was very tired by that time. I was sleeping outside on the grass. Immediately, the police was there. Hey, you can't do that here. You must go in terminal 2 or 3, where you had to wait. And my flight back was by that time. That was another story, because I couldn't get the flight in Anchorage when I was with the China airline, and so they changed me to Delta. And Delta flew over to New York, and then in New York it was changed to what's the name? One of the cheap airlines with Bronson.
Virgin.
Virgin Atlantic, no. And I flew with them, and that one didn't fly, so I had to wait the night. Anyway, that's how the second time I was. But that time in Alaska, it took me 3 or 4 weeks. But it was also late already in the year, so I was happy to get out and get back into some.
You remember there's one small town in the north of Alaska, which is the most north.
Yeah, but that's called
Dead
Horse.
Dead Horse?
Dead Horse is, at that time, the first time I was there, I was shown around all the oil facilities because I was with British Petroleum. The next time I couldn't get there, and it was a few days after 9/11.
Okay.
So they had tours but the visitors would stop short of the oil company territory, and that was in a place called Dead Horse. It's a so-called end of the Dalton Highway. I think it's the Dalton or Dalton Highway. It's or the Dempster. No, it's Dempster or Dalton. Anyway, one of the two. The other one is in Yukon, going up to Inuvik. The other one is in the U.S. Alaska side and goes to the oil facilities up there. You know. And so that was the second time, but that was about it, you know, because there's many things you can do in Alaska, you know, like hunting and stuff like that, but expensive, and always the wrong time of year. Obviously, at the end of September, I see some pictures. I don't even see them, but I camped short of the suddenly after the Brooks, there was a completely different temperature, and a fog was coming in from the north and icy. My tent in the morning was just brick hard. Was the kind of ice frost, and so I was happy when I got out again, you know.
Okay. Good. Thank you very much for the good story.